So Zechariah 9:9 and Mark chapter 11 verses 1 through 11. We'll spend probably most of the time in Mark chapter 11. But Zechariah 9:9 and Mark chapter 11 verses 1 through 11, I just entitled this, Behold, Your King is Coming. Behold, Your King is Coming. Today is Palm Sunday, if nobody has told you that. It is the beginning of Passion Week as Jesus gets ready to head to the cross. We have Good Friday service here at 6:30. If you can't make that, we have Good Friday service at Pastor Leonard's church at First Baptist Natalia at noon. And you go, well, Mike, why are you doing that? Because I'm teaching at the Baptist church for the South Texas Ministerial Fellowship. So if you want to come out and support that, you can come out and support that as well as we get ready for Good Friday service. And the next week is Easter service. Easter wear. What do we wear for Easter? Whatever you want. Okay? If you want to dress nice, you want to put on a tie, you want to make your kids get dressed, you want to make your husband get dressed, you're fine with that. We always suggest Hawaiian shirts for the guys, but it's up to y'all. However y'all want to do that. But again, you come as you are and be ready for the word. That's really what we want you here for. And so we hope that we see you. Now, as far as baptisms are concerned, I have one already. So we have one baptism that we are doing. So if there's anybody else who wants to be baptized who has not been baptized, we will actually baptize you here. You'll actually be able to go change, and then we'll have the baptism tub in the back, and we'll baptize you. And then you can get dried off and then come back and get changed. And then, you don't have to go home wet in your clothes now unless you just want to do that, and then that's on you. We've done those before. So, but hopefully if there's anybody else who has not been baptized and you want to be baptized, please, I would highly recommend it. If you're going to serve in ministry, that was one of the first things somebody told me. It's like, I was like, I want to help out. And they were like, why don't you get baptized first? You don't have to, but I would suggest. And so I got baptized, and then me, Teresa, Tally. I think it was us three, right? And Matthew. And then Glory got it before us, and then Lena. And then it just kind of got all of us. Then we all got dunked. And so hopefully, if you want to be baptized, please let us know, and we'll make sure we baptize you. So, behold, your King is coming. We'll look at this in two parts. Jesus is in control. And then Jesus is riding in on a colt. Jesus is riding in on a colt. Zechariah 9:9 is a wonderful verse, and the reason why we opened up with that before we started worship is that verse is actually written, Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. That prophecy was written 516 years before Jesus rides in on the colt. So again, we're going to go over a lot of prophecies today, and actually when we hear our Good Friday service, and also Wednesday service. So we're taking a break we're in 2 Peter. We'll be back in 2 Peter the following Sunday after Easter. We're taking a break from Genesis. Because we're going to actually look at the last week of Christ on Wednesday night, and we'll actually break that down, and so I want to do that. But there's so many prophecies that are fulfilled just in this week alone, all the way leading up to the crucifixion and the resurrection. But we know that all four Gospels cover the baptism of Christ, the feeding of the 5,000, the trials, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. So all four. So the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then the book of John, they all cover those. And so it's important that you understand that as you study Passion Week, to understand that this is an important teachings that are in here, and it's leading up to when we had Passover, because when Jesus enters into Jerusalem, it's Passover. Normally there's about 80,000 people in Jerusalem in the area. But for Passover, there's some 2 to 3 million people. Everybody's expecting to hear from God. You should come to church every Sunday expecting to hear from the Lord for yourself, not your husband or not your kids, right? Because it's really easy to go, man, that would be really good if my son would just do that, right? That is for you. It's for the person in the mirror. That's why I love that book that we're doing for the men, Man in the Mirror, because it's God is speaking to the person in the mirror. But you got some 2 to 3 million people that are there, and they're waiting to hear from the Lord. They come every Passover expecting that. But you have the resurrection of Lazarus that has happened just right before this. And Lazarus is actually, not only do they want Jesus dead, but they want Lazarus dead. In John chapter 12, verses 9 and 11, it says, "Now a great many of the Jews knew that he was there, and they came, not just for Jesus' sake only, but that they might also see Lazarus, whom they had raised from the dead. But the chief priests plotted to put Lazarus to death also, because on account of because on account of him, many of the Jews went away and believed in Jesus." So, Jesus is heading to Jerusalem. He says that in Mark chapter 10, verses 33 through 34, saying, "Seeing we are going up to Jerusalem," and he tells them exactly what's going to happen, right? So you have the chief priests and the scribes that are ready to kill Lazarus and also Jesus. They're ready to put him to death. They've had enough. And so in Mark chapter 10, verse 33, Jesus tells them everything that's going to happen. "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priest and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise." See, all of these things happen. Jesus says they're going to happen, and they happen. But the thing that the disciples forgot is the last part. "And after 3 days he will rise." Right? Now, I don't know how many of you have ever had your life put, like, we could die. If you've been in combat, you go through that every day. Every day you wake up, you're just trying to survive that day. Right? And so you can imagine the apostles and the disciples are like, man, do we really want to go to Jerusalem? Why are we going to Jerusalem if they want to kill you? Right? You avoid those situations. Not unless you have to. But we know that he tells them everything that's going to happen. Jesus tells them that he's going to be killed. And I love that one of the things I read this morning is the reason Jesus heads to the cross is, and the reason why people want to kill him is Christ is hated because sin is loved. I read that this morning on Pastor Roberts in Calvary Chapel, San Angelo. I was like, man, that's beautiful. Christ is hated because sin is loved. The chief scribes want to kill him because they're envious. They have sin. I love Thomas. Thomas is actually one of the, we always have these kind of characters of each of the disciples. You have Peter, who's always angry and saying things he's not supposed to, and you're going, oh man, I like him. But then what do we know about Thomas, doubting Thomas? If you're going to get stuck with something, that's not a good one to be stuck with. But Thomas was very a man's man. Because one of the things Thomas says is when he finds out we got to go to Jerusalem and they're going to kill him, Thomas says in John chapter 11, verse 16, so Thomas called the twin and said to his fellow disciples, let's also go that we may die with him. Now, I don't know what happened because it's easy to say this, but when your feet hit the fire, or when the steak hits the pan and starts to sizzle, why did they all scatter? Thomas didn't stay there to die. He's gone, right? But that's what happens. When people start getting pressed, right? When people start getting pressed in their faith, sometimes they scatter. Sometimes they get scared. They don't know what to do. You lean in. You lean in. You know, if you don't think that people are being killed for following Christ, they're being killed in Syria. Beheaded. There was a pastor in South Africa that was taken from the pulpit and kidnapped while he was teaching. Persecutions happen in our country. In Maine, there's a battle happening between two parents who are going through divorce. And the reason why I know this is part of Calvary Chapel. One parent goes to Calvary Chapel, attends Calvary Chapel. The other parent doesn't want anything to do with God and doesn't want anything to do with Calvary Chapel or any church. Doesn't matter what church it is. And so there's a battle going on in the Supreme Court for the state of Maine, because the judge who moved from California to Maine, who's now a judge, said, hey, you know what? She can't take them to church. And so now Liberty Council's gotten involved. So there's persecution coming into your country. They're arresting pastors in England. If you go preach the gospel on the corner, you'll be arrested and put in jail for 2 years. If you pray for somebody in public, you don't even have to be a clergy. If you pray for somebody in public, 2 years in jail. Even if the other person consents. That's in England. Persecution. It's coming. Are you going to scatter? Like the disciples? Because I'm like, I lean in, man. I'm like, let's go. Because, anybody who's been in the military, we put our bodies on the line. That's what we do. And so we understand. But for me, this is so much easier because my soul belongs to Jesus. So regardless of what you do to me here, my soul belongs to Jesus. Just grab those plow, tighten it up, and keep following. And He'll get you through that. And so we need to understand, like, it's easy for us to say, yes, let's all go, that we may die with Him. But then when that steak hits that pan, and you get that sizzle, everybody's like, ooh, I'm gonna back away. I don't want to be near the fire. But that's the whole point of our faith, is that we step into those fires because that's what God's called us to do. And we do that to bring glory to God. So sometimes you have to step into something that you're not expecting to do, right? Well, why do I have to be the one that has to speak over the school board? Because that's what you've been called to do. You do what God gives you to do. So you need to be willing to lay down your life for Christ here. A lot of us aren't that. And guess what? There'll be a lot of people that show up to church next week, the Christmas and Easter bunch. They come and then they don't. I'm just going to go back to do my life, and that's okay. That's what they're going through. That's what's happening to them. But like for me, it's like that's why I try to tell y'all need to be willing to step in to what God is calling you to do, and it's not going to be easy. Right? But guess what? You're not the only one that He can call. So if you say, hey, I'm not going to do it, He'll just call somebody else. You're not that important. None of us are. He can replace me next week, And I see that every time one of the guys come up here and teaches. For the men's teaching, I'm like, well, that guy could be teaching. That guy could be a shepherd. I've seen a couple of those guys come up here, and I'm like, they have a heart of a shepherd, some of them do. And that's the prayer. But we have to be willing to step into these things. The first thing that we see is that Jesus is in control. We see in verse 1 in Mark chapter 11, just real quick, one thing I do want to cover in Zechariah 9:9. One of the things that he says is that rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion, shout, O daughter of Jerusalem, behold, your king is coming to you. He is just meaning righteous, and having what? Salvation. But look at what the next thing is, lowly. That word lowly is humble. To be humble, right? And riding in on a donkey and a colt, a foal of a donkey. And we'll explain why the donkey. Because that's probably not the thing we would have chosen to jump in and got, hey, let me ride in on a donkey. That'll show them who we are, right? But that's because he's lowly and humble, and when he comes back, he'll be the Lion of Judah, and it's not going to be fun. Jesus is in control. Verse 1, it says, "Now when they drew near to Jerusalem and Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, 'Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied on it, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, "Why are you doing this?" say, "The Lord has need of it, and will send it back here immediately." So we know that Bethphage and Bethany is right near the Mount of Olives, and within that is it was actually one of the few markets that you could go from Bethany to Bethphage that you could actually walk to without breaking the Sabbath. That's how close the distances were. And this is actually the place when people come in for Passover, this is where they would stay. So, rumor mill, you know how gossip goes. Did you hear what Jesus did? Lazarus was dead. And there's Lazarus. He raised him from the dead, man. And that starts going around. And next thing you know, you got 2 to 3 million people that know about Jesus. And Jesus did all of his ministry in this area of Bethany. And so they would have known him. And also, this is also the same area that Lazarus lived in. It says that Jesus sent 2 of his disciples. I have seen more people arguing over who the 2 disciples are. The Bible doesn't tell you, so does it? It's just 2 disciples, right? Well, I wonder if it was, Peter, and it's like they don't give you the names. So it is. This is what happened. But I love this. He says, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it." So it's important. Nobody's ever sat on this colt. Now, has anybody in here, and the only one I'm thinking that may have done it has broken a horse, have you broken a horse before? Tommy, no. Whoo! It's not an easy thing to do, to break a horse. If you ever watch it on YouTube, because that's as close as I want to get to it, because it's not easy to break a horse. And you're going to get bucked off a few times. You're going to get bit, kicked, and he's going to get on this colt. It's never been sat on. That's a very important point that he's giving you. And you have to remember, because he's fully God, fully man, he's still in charge of creation. He still has that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to sit on this colt that nobody else has sat on. Anybody else gets on this colt, you're getting off the colt pretty quickly, because it's going to buck you off. It don't want you on it. And so I love that. But it says that he untied it, bring it. If anyone says to you, "Why are you doing this?" say, "The Lord has need of it, and we'll send it back here immediately." So we know that we have seen Jesus' sovereignty throughout the Gospels. If you look at it, you see where he in the middle of the storm, he says, "Be still," right? And when Peter's catching fish, we looked at this last week in Luke chapter 5, verses 4 through 6, when he tells them to put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking to the point where the boats are actually being pulled in. That's how many fish there were. But he's in charge. Jesus has always been in charge. And we forget this. It's like when we look at the understanding that Jesus is in control, he sits at the right hand of the Father, and he will return. It's given to us in Psalm 2, verses 1 through 12. It tells us very easily that, "Why do the nations rage at the people and plot in vain? The king of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bond apart and cast away their cord from us. He who sits in heaven laughs, and the Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, As for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell you of a decree. The Lord said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations of your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. And you shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in a way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. The Father promises that the Son has complete victory. That's in the second coming of Christ. He will have control of all the nations of the world. He'll deal with everything at that time when the Lion of Judah comes. But what we know is that at this point, he is the perfect, spotless, sinless Lamb of God who's going to be obedient to his Father's will. And he's going to get on this colt and allow public worship for the first time. And he's not doing it because he wants to be worshipped. He's doing it because he's lowly, he's humble. He's doing it because it has to be done for prophecy to be fulfilled. That's what you're going to find out. A lot of what happens during Passion Week is to fulfill prophecy. Something that was written 516 years before is fulfilled. It's to remind us that Christ has victory. Christ will deal with the nations in his second coming, but Christ will judge. We know that Pontius Pilate thought that he was in control. In John chapter 19, verses 10 and 11, then Pilate said to him, Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you? And Jesus answered, You could not have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin. He's like, if it's not given to you, if that power is not given to you by my Father, you have no power. Every person that's put into a position, whether it's president or prime minister or leader, whatever, even judge, they are put there because God's allowed them to be in that position. Peter even talks about, as he talks about being delivered up, he talks about the definite plan. In Acts chapter 2, verse 23, then Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and the foreknowledge of God. You crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. We know that Jesus is still at the right hand of God in Colossians chapter 3, verse 1. It says, If then you have been raised with Christ, seek things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. And yet Jesus is in control. We know that in Revelation chapter 22, verses 12 through 17, it says, Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense with me to repay each one for what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right of the tree of life, and that they may enter the city by the gates. Make sure you get this part. Outside are the dogs, the sorcerers. We talked about sorcery and magicians this past week on Wednesday night. And we talked about Bethel and those destiny cards that they're using. And you go, what are they? They're basically tarot cards written by a Christian witch, which there's no such thing as a Christian witch. She's just a witch. And they're using destiny cards to tell you your destiny and trying to label it as something that God has approved, and God hasn't approved it. outside of the dogs and the sorcerers. And then I want to make sure you get this, and the sexual immoral, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. So you want to love and come into church and act like you got it all together, and you live like the devil, less you better get yourself together. I see this and I say, man, like, God can forgive. I was sitting there. Do you know, anybody know Sammy the Bull? Sammy the Bull. Anybody keep up with any of the crime family of not the Gambini, but the I see, that's what I get for bringing it up. Greg Laurie actually had been speaking to one of the crime bosses in New York, John Gotti. He was with the Gotti family. Sammy the Bull killed probably over 20-something people that had been documented. He turned state's evidence, and they gave him a sweetheart deal, and he got out. Well, Sammy the Bull just came to faith. He just got baptized. And you go, how? Like, how can God forgive that? He's a murderer. No, he has put his trust in Jesus Christ. He's asked for forgiveness of his sins. He's turned from his sins and asked Christ in his heart. And at the end of the day, now he's a follower of God. And you go, how? God can save anybody. We have to understand that. Like, and now your first cringing is like when I say he killed 21 people, you're like, I think Johnny Depp, they did a movie with Johnny Depp who played the part of him. Don't watch it, okay? I don't want y'all going to look at stuff y'all not supposed to. You're going to be like, ooh, that's a good movie, Pastor said. Don't do that to me. But it's just a reminder that God, you know, if your name is any of these on the list, you can ask for forgiveness and actually walk away from whatever it is that you're practicing and come to faith. Verse 16 says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you about the descendants for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, come. And let the one who hears say, come. And let the one who is thirsty come. And let the one who desires take the water of life without price. It's to remind us that Jesus is in control. And all we have to do is just say, like the Spirit and the bride say, come. If you're thirsty, come. Right? Come to Christ. Come to Christ. Mark chapter 11 verse 3 says, if anyone says to you, why are you doing this? Say the Lord has need of it, and we'll send it back here immediately. And I love that. I'm sure a lot of us would love to go, hey, I need your car. The Lord has need of it. I need to go out of town. Like, who has the newest car? Okay, that's the car. The Lord has need of it. We got to go out of town. Right? And so, but one of the things I always love about this is, if you think about Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10, you're saved by grace through faith, but it says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. The Lord has need of you. The Lord has need of you to walk in those good works that he's prepared beforehand, as you are a father or a mother, as you are a husband or a wife, as you serve the church. The Lord has need of you. He wants to use everyone. None of us are like, man, God could never use me. Right? I think I said that, I don't know how many times. I was just like, just hand me a broom and a mop and I'll clean the church. That's all I could see myself doing. And some of you probably say, you probably need to go back to that. I still do that. I still get to do that. I still come in here and clean toilets and do all that stuff. That's part of a pastor's job. Right? And the thing is like, the Lord had need of me. And he has need of you. And he wants to use you, but you have to be willing to allow that to happen. You have to be willing, and sometimes you jump into something that you do a ministry thing, and and you go, man, I thought I was really meant for children's ministry. You do 2 weeks of it, and you go, I'm not meant for children's ministry. And that's okay. Then you could try something else, right? This is part of us growing, right? But the Lord has need of you. And he had need of it. So it says in verse 4, and they went away and found the colt tied at the door outside in the street. So the 2 disciples now find it, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, what are you doing untying that colt? You can imagine they're probably like, ooh, who are you going to say it, or am I going to say it? Let me say it. The Lord has need of it, right? But you can imagine that happening. And it says, and they told them what Jesus had said, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. Now, the colt, the donkey, is actually what this is. And again, it's just a reminder that Jesus is fulfilling prophecy in Zechariah 9:9. It is the promised Savior that is to come. And Matthew tells us in Matthew 21, verse 4, this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. And so it's taken place because this is what was supposed to happen. And we need to remember as we look at these prophecies that are going to be fulfilled, there are many that are completed over this period. Zechariah 9:9 is just one of them. And this is actually, again, this will be the only public demonstration of his worship that's allowed, but Jesus allows this during the ministry to fulfill Scripture. There are many other things that were fulfilled. If you think about the promise of the offspring in Genesis 3:15, it says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, and he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Jesus is here, so that has been fulfilled, right? He's been born. In Galatians 4:4, but when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law. And that fulfilled as Isaiah 7 verse 14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Jesus said that they would reject him and despise him. In Isaiah 53 verse 3, he was despised and rejected by man, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one of whom men hid their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. He was led to a lamb to slaughter. In Isaiah 53:7, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that's before its shearer is silent, so he opened not his mouth. And we know in Matthew chapter 27, verses 13 and 14, then Pilate said to him, do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he answered him not one word, so that the governor marveled greatly. The governor's marveling greatly, but Jesus is fulfilling prophecy. Because he's used to people, I didn't do it. He's used to people lying and trying to get off. Like, just please show me mercy, right? Don't crucify me. And he said nothing. He said nothing. He was offered soured wine on the cross in Psalm 69, verse 21. They gave me poison for food, and for my thirst they gave me sour wine to drink. And we know that's fulfilled in Matthew 27:34. They gave him sour wine mingled with gall to drink, but when he had tasted it, he would not drink it. They mocked him. In Psalm 22, verse 7, all who see me mock me. They make my mouth at me. They wag their heads at me. In Mark chapter 15, verses 19 through 20, then they struck him on the head with a reed and spat on him, and bowing the knee, they worshipped him. And when they had mocked him, they took the purple off him and put his own clothes on him and led him out to crucify him. We also have the place of the burial. In Matthew, it tells us of a rich man, Arimathea, named Joseph. In Isaiah 53, verse 9, it says, and they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich man his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. And that covers the prophecy that was fulfilled in Matthew 27, verses 57 through 60, when Joseph asked for the body to be buried in his tomb.